Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. I know for the past few days I've been kind of focused on readings regarding the election of the new Pope. Now, unconsciously or subconsciously, I'm not sure what was going on in my mind for me to be so drawn to it. But I've recently begun to think along certain lines that have begun to surface in my head. Now, before I share these things, I want to warn you that this may be one of those times where you might want to put on your, what are they called? The aluminum hats? I forget what the expression is. But just bear with me. Now, if I had a channel that was for members, if I had like, a membership club or something like this, would be one that would be in for members only, because I don't know that it's everyone's cup of tea. So bear that in mind. For those of you who are new to my channel is obviously geared toward tarot, typically the more traditional, old school tarot decks, but historic tarot decks. And as modern tarot, it qualifies as part of the history of tarot. I do occasionally dip into tarot modern decks. The deck I'll be using today is the Fortuna tarot deck, and this one is the Emerald Anima. There are several Fortuna tarot decks. I have the Opal, which is my preferred, but this one I think works well for the topic. I think this deck is more masculine than the Opal that I have, even though the Opal one might be more appropriate in some ways because it's pink. But I think since the papacy is overwhelmingly masculine, I think this deck with its imagery, which is the same as the Opal deck, just lends itself better to the topic. Now, if you are in any way opposed to tarot in any way, this channel's not for you. Click off. I'm giving you fair warning. If you are opposed to challenging or questioning the status quo, particularly when it comes to religion, this particular video will not be for you. Okay, having said that, some of you may recall that as a child, I've done a few videos, not just one, there were a few videos, but I have over 600 videos, so it's kind of hard to find them. But I did one recently within the past few months. When I was a child, I had an experience whereby I saw a thing in the sky. Now, I was either 6 going on 7 or 7 going on 8. It was 1965. I think it was 65. So I was, I guess I was going on 7. I must have been going on 7. And I was alone on a boardwalk. In those days, I think people were very cavalier and trusting of society. And my grandmother was in a skillo hall playing bingo. And I was left to my own designs. And I was sitting on a bench, a metal bench, a fence rather. It was like a metal, just like a metal fence that was on the boardwalk. And below was the ocean. The ocean was high tide, so the ocean was in underneath the boardwalk. And I'm sitting on, there were multiple like railings to the fence. And I was sitting on one and I was like resting on the other. And I looked up in the sky and I was old enough to know that it was not an airplane. I knew what airplanes look like. But something in the sky that was not that far from me, because I could tell that it wasn't an airplane. And I could see that it had form. and I could see lines of either part of its construction or that it was they were windows, or I'm not sure. But I was close enough that I could see some details. And the thing just hung there in the sky. There was, it was a dark night. And I was mesmerized by it, and it caught my attention for several minutes. And at some point, one of my cousins, I was instructed by my grandmother to go find out what Lynn was doing. In those days, they called me Lynn. And when he came out, he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, I just pointed up and said, "Look." And he lost his, you know what? He was a few years older. He's probably 3 to 5 years older than me. And he was old enough and sophisticated enough to say, "Oh my gosh, that's a UFO." In those days, we called them UFOs. So he left me there, and he ran into the skillo hole, and then he screamed, "Oh my God, there's a UFO!" And like the entire skillo hole came out. And then before I knew it, I was descended upon, dozens of people asking me what I saw and how long I was there. How long I was there for, like a whole night, like not a whole night, but I was there for a long time because I had nothing else to do. And but it left as soon as like everybody came out. Maybe 1 or 2 people saw it, and then it was gone. So I've always, and it was pink, which is probably why I love pink. But it left such a huge impression on me, huge. I always wondered about it, like, what was that about? I remember a few years later, I was still young. I was looking for it. I would look for it, and I wanted it to come back, and I would look for it out my bedroom window, just saying, "Will you come back?" But it never did, as far as I know. But it's part of who I am, and it's part of like my belief system. I always felt that there were possibilities above and beyond what we understood. Okay, now, how does this tie into the Pope, which is how I began this video? Well, the first thing, when the Pope was elected, and I found out that he was a man from Peru, the first thing in my head, like just joking around in my own head, I guess, was like, Peru, I wonder if he ever saw any UFOs. And I kind of thought of that kind of jokingly. And then, as I guess the week has progressed, I guess we've had a new Pope now for about a week, maybe 2. I'm filming this on May 14th. It's a Wednesday, May 14th. So you'll see this maybe on Friday, something like that. I thought it was something. And then I started thinking about Pope Leo and the 14th. And the fact that when he went to Villanova, which I mentioned in a previous video that I did of the Pope, he majored in mathematics. He might have already been aware that he was on a priestly trajectory, but his major was mathematics, which I thought was very interesting as well. And then, so he spent years in Peru, and I think he identifies more with the Peruvian people than he does with the American people, as I mentioned, and as we all saw when he had the opportunity to speak, when he first addressed the people. He spoke 3 languages, and not one of them was English. Okay, so I think he distanced himself from America, which is smart. And also, when I did other readings, and I was like, well, why was he chosen, since he was a dark horse, and he was low on the, of the list of 17 the list of 17 cardinals that were considered in the running, he was 16, so he was a real dark horse. And one of the things, that maybe made him attractive to the cardinals voting might have had to do with the fact that he would be firm against Catholics in the United States who aligned with you-know-who, because maybe they needed the message to go to them, that their Pope, who, very religious Catholics listen to, is telling them that they're, missing the mark if they're following this regime, and if they're, so I thought that was part of it. But and he was one cardinal, I think, who was appointed by Pope Francis, who preceded him, who was a Franciscan, right? That you welcome strangers, right? You welcome the immigrants. And then it occurred to me, he was from Argentina, Pope Francis. Well, he was Argentinian. And he was known to have an interest in UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And I should have checked before I began this video. I don't know if Pope Leo XIV is a Jesuit, but I believe Pope Francis was, and they're the most progressive of all, right? They're the most progressive of all the priests who would, if any, would be open to the possibility of non-human intelligence. They would be. And it occurred to me, Pope Francis appointed this cardinal, and the others apparently overwhelmingly voted for him because they have to have, I think it's an 80% or 2/3 vote, right? And they got him pretty quickly. They chose him pretty quickly. And one of his platforms is, we welcome strangers. So it's occurring to me, if we're being prepared for, put on your aluminum tinfoil hats, that's the word, tinfoil hat. Are we being prepared for the possibility of learning that there's extraterrestrial life, and that the Vatican believes that? Now, it's known that they have miles and miles and miles worth of documentation of stuff that we'll never see, right? But if you think of all the stories that even predate Christianity of visitors, and then perhaps we're angels. I mean, we interpret things in the way that we understand them where we are here and now, but who knows what angels might have been. And then they became absorbed by the Catholic Church and other faiths. So this is the line of thinking that I'm on right now. So that's what this reading is going to be on. So I think that the abstract nature of the Fortuna Tarot, which was given to me by a friend who I still consider a friend, but I don't know if he considers me a friend anymore. But I think this deck really lends itself very well to the reading that I'm going to be doing with a few. I think I'm just going to do a signature spread. I haven't decided yet. I'll go off in my meditative place and determine which I think would be the better way to go with this. But, this deck is inclined to kind of lean towards like Rider Waite Smith, and it has astrological symbolism, and it'll have some, you see, it has like symbolism on it and stuff that I tend to ignore. But for the purpose of this video, I I have a cheat sheet because I'm not an astrologer, as all of you know by now. So I have a couple cheat sheets that will tell me what the symbols that I might encounter with this deck mean. And by all means, if any of you are savvy and you pick up on symbolism that these cards show that I'm not picking up on or understanding, please feel free to mention that aspect. I am going to interpret the cards as the message is received by myself, okay? I will acknowledge the symbols. I'll mention them. But that's not to say that I don't welcome insight for this particular reading. It would. So let me go off into my meditative place. And I believe the question I want to ask was one of the reasons Pope Leo XIV was chosen was because the church wants to bring us closer. I don't know if he'll be the one, but if their goal is to bring us closer to being prepared, not just to accept strangers into our lives from foreign countries, but a bigger picture. You know, I think generally he was chosen as a great choice because Americans would have identified with him, even if he himself identified more closely with Peru. But he was a good choice because, in particular, certain Americans need to be redirected, especially in their faith. They have to choose. Is it your faith or is it your politics, that is stronger to you? And so I think there was an appeal there, for choosing the Pope. That might have been one of them. Not that it has anything to do with me, not that his choice has everything to do with being American. I doubt it, but I think that was a feature. But I wonder if in the bigger picture, if he was chosen to prepare all of us for the inevitable, that we should be welcoming non-human intelligence, as maybe they're aware that it exists, and maybe it's time for disclosure. Okay, I decided that I will be doing a signature spread just to see what comes up. This is a rather large deck, and I'm sorry, it's upside down. I don't read reversals, so I hope I can comfortably get the cards. Okay, we have the High Priestess. Now, for me, I respond to this in the context of the question because I was a child looking up at the sky over water, right? And I saw a disc. And I was sitting on a fence looking up. So the first thing that strikes me personally is that connection. Now here we have the moon. It happened at night. I am the person who's interpreting the cards. And so the message is coming to me personally, right? In ways that I personally interpret the cards, just as it happens to you. Now you can take your slant on this, but remember, I am the one who is interpreting these cards and has asked the question to the universe. You can see in it what you'd like, as I would if I looked at your cards. But if you were to read the cards, you're the one divining the interpretation, not I. And that's the case here as well. Okay, second card. Prince of Talismans. So this would suggest a young man in his prime, well-educated, or a young person in their prime. Now, talismans is the suit of pentacles. So a talisman could represent male, in this deck, since it is coins. I mean, coins and cups could represent young people in their prime, like maybe in their 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s even, of either gender, but would allow definitely for feminine. The universe. So this, and I never took out the magnum opus. I forgot to take that card out, which is an additional card in this particular deck. So we'll see if that pops up. But wow, this is fascinating that we would get this card in a spread like this and that it is called the universe. Look at that. Now that symbol in the top center, I'm going to pull my cheat sheet. And what have we here? Is that's Saturn, which suggests karma, justice, honor, fatalism. So I did a sloppy job shuffling since some of them are turning upside down. So we have legacy, 10 of coins, which I'm just going to call it coins, even though I think it's referencing talismans. But, we have it could be considered what you've built your life up for, right? The legacy of the Catholic Church, since that is the question, that is the topic at hand, right? So they're coming to a time, in their legacy that they're about to burst, baby. I dropped the cheat sheets, fell on the floor. Let me pick them up. We have these two symbols. I think that's Scorpio. And I'm not sure what that is. Okay, so we have the mercurial nature of Mercury. And then that one, I think, is the planet Mercury. And then the other one is, I think it's Virgo. Oh, that's Virgo. It's not Scorpio, excuse me. Now, Mercury suggests protecting, wit, communication, being clever, but mercurial too, I'm sure, right? That's where the word comes from. And then Virgo suggests analytical, critical thinking, attention to detail, a push to make the world better. So that's very interesting. Okay, front and center of the core 9. I'm looking eagerly awaiting what this card is. Perfect number 6. 6 of fire. A spark, a collective spark of energy, of warmth, of embracing everyone. 6 is a number for me, represents the number of love. Now, those two symbols, which don't mean much to me, but might mean something to you. We have Jupiter, which is a teacher, helps in war against demons, Lord of prayer and good fortune. And then the other symbol is Leo. Now, I'm interpreting them as cards, but I'm just giving my thumbnail understanding of what these, or particularly the planetary meanings or symbols might represent. So it's very interesting because the question is, are we being prepared for embracing, right? Not just foreigners or strangers into our homes, which is on the surface, right? It's just the earthly understanding, but could there be more? And this row here suggests that there could be so far. Wish fulfillment. And we have, again, Jupiter, repeat it. Is that repeated twice? Yeah, Jupiter's repeated twice. And then that second one, is that Gemini? I think that might be Gemini, right? So there's like a duality there. Wish fulfillment. Now I am the seeker. So is it my wish fulfillment in desiring to understand, if that's what the case is, Whose wish fulfillment is this? Well, I guess it would be the wish fulfillment of the church. The question is it on their agenda to advance the concept of non-earthly intelligence, non-human intelligence? Could that be? So this row seems to confirm that, doesn't it? It really seems that they're ripe for it, and that they're embracing. It's like love is behind it. Maybe they think that they're getting close to that, and this is their ultimate wish. I don't think it's my wish. Okay, so here we have, is that Venus? And I think, what is that, Taurus? Let me look at my cheat sheet. See, I'm definitely at a disadvantage. You can't teach old dogs new tricks. No, that's definitely not Taurus, it's Aries. But maybe I shouldn't even try to relay what those things are, because you guys know better than me anyway. So I'm just going to ignore it, but just pay attention to them yourselves. So we have four. We have 4 of candles, or 4 of flames, or 4 of fire, which I interpret as batons. And I think it's very nice that we're able to fit these cards. Okay, this is the Fool card. It's called the Seeker. So, it does represent what the person asking the question, or who we're doing the reading for, or what we're looking for, right? So it does, and it's pointing up towards here, right? It's pointing up toward a collective attitude of creative thinking, creative energy, collaborative, embracing of love. And the last card in the core 9 is the Prince of Elixirs, which would be the equivalent, I believe, of one of the knights. Oh, I have to check and make sure. The prince would not be a page or a valet, but I have to check and to verify, because I haven't used this deck in a little while. But the Prince of Elixirs would be like the Knight of Cups. But let me check to verify. I'll be right back. Oh, yeah, duh. If I looked at these, this would be like, this would be his position, which I think in the occultist's tradition, fire, I think, would be the knights. And then the cups would be the suit. So this would be the knight. So we have 2 knights, I think. We have the prince, or is this a princess? No, we have 2 knights. So we have 2 knights that appear. And they're both compatible. Prince of Coin and Prince of Cups. Interesting. Okay, let me go off, calculate what the quintessential cards would be. I'll be right back. Okay, interestingly, the overall quint card for the entire spread is the card, the 42 card, the Strength card, or the Courage card. So the suggestion is that in our vulnerability, we must be strong. The other quint cards, interestingly, the top row is the Magician, which I think coincides uncannily well with seeing something in the sky. I think when I did a reading for myself previously regarding the experience I had, and I believe I made it a public video, it was like me looking up at the sky. But then I described this card as similarly just now, because it reminded me of looking up at the sky in the nighttime over water. And I was a person. I was a female. I was made at 7 years old. I wasn't the high priestess, but I was feminine. So, capping this row kind of verifies to me, as the person who is doing the reading, that there is something about what is above and beyond us that may have been a feature as to why the past two popes, at least, might have been chosen. Pope Francis was known to have a keen interest in UFOs. And I think it's very interesting that Pope Leo XIV, his first degree was in mathematics. And he lived in Peru for a long time. So it would seem impossible for me, for most of us maybe, to believe that he wasn't among people that might have had experiences, if he didn't even himself, regarding what is above and beyond. Uncanny. We have the Empress and the Emperor also as the other quint cards. Now, sadly, whenever I see the Emperor nowadays in the context of the world events, I always kind of relate it to you-know-who, because he's corrupt. And I see mostly the corruption when I see now the Emperor, which is a shame because it corrupts the meaning of the card for me. So let's consider whether this has to do with him at all. When we take a look at the cards in this row. The church is often referenced as the mother, right? The mother, the mother. The Empress in especially this, occult type spreads, occult type cards, such as the Rider-Waite-Smith, is the one that's the mother. The female pope, although she could be seen as the mother, she isn't usually. She's seen more as intuition or the spiritual realm, right? But the Empress is seen as the mother, right? So this could be seen, again, confirming that this row, as I thought in the beginning, was a reference to the church itself and the mother church, and preparing us to be brave. Now, bear in mind, for this top row, when I said that this top row overwhelmingly to me addresses what's above and beyond our universe, our planet, right? I related this to my experience as a child, looking up, recognizing that there was something up there. Now, the knights, bear in mind, and for the record, the princes are the knights, and the princesses are the pages or the valets. So bear in mind that, princes can represent people, but since it doesn't really apply to anyone that's being asked about, it could take on more of the role of messages coming forth, messages of intelligence, messages of the physical world, which of course the universe would be part of. So I think this whole row verifies everything. Messages coming from the universe, or knowledge about the universe. This row, I think, confirms the choice of Pope Leo and possibly Pope Francis before him of the legacy of the church coming together for a different purpose. There's a lot of corruption in the church. I mean, there's no question about that. But it's possible at this stage in the game that they're prepared to take on a more pure role. And preparing us to be brave, for sure, regarding the message or the possibility finding out about what lies above us. And then this row could be about redirecting the thought, right? Redirecting the message of individuals who align themselves here. While it's true that I am this seeker, I am the one who read the cards, but I kind of did it on the behalf of others too, right? It's not just mine, but on the behalf of others. And the arrow points up, and the arrow points in the direction of love and messages of love, right? Love, pointing up, right? Creative energy, creative focus, creative participation in receiving a message. Here we have 4 stability, bringing stability to an unstable message, right? Where this character has been the focus. So we have possibly Mother Church, the Mother Church, and tyrant, a tyrant. And he's not the only tyrant. But this might not be a bad time for someone. And, maybe it's the church, and maybe there will be other religious leaders who will come forth in some type of communal meeting or something to try to redirect and try to prepare us. Because let's face it, if there is a known fact, right, that there may be non-human intelligence among us or hovering very near to us, it's going to take a lot of courage and maturity and wisdom on our part. And it's going to take leaders to direct us. And it may take spiritual leaders, and it doesn't have to just be the church. I did this in reference to the Pope because he was the most topical religious leader that we're talking about at the moment. But it doesn't just have to be him. But for the church to have chosen him, that might have been a feature. I think these cards suggest that as a possibility. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, and please be brave.